Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Andrew Wells, I'm a photographer here in the UK, and today we're going to be looking at creating a panoramic image within Lightroom. So we're not going to take the image out of Lightroom and create the pano in Photoshop or some other alternative photo editing program. We're going to do everything within Lightroom. So let's jump straight into Lightroom. We're using CC 2015 here, and you see I've got my first image loaded up here. So this is basically the Somerset levels. We're stood on a mount, and there was a magnificent view across the levels where it was all flooded. Couldn't fit it in a single image, so I've captured these series of images, and I've captured them in upright format, so portrait format, because then that way we can get much greater detail when doing this. And I've essentially overlapped these images by about 25%, so in fact probably even more than that. You can see that's probably a third of the way across to where it is on there, so 25 to 30%, which is absolutely fine for me. It means we've got as much detail as possible. Now the only thing is, I really wanted to try and push this and test it properly. So I have captured it handheld, so we are not using a tripod for this. The whole thing was handheld, so we're going to give this a bit of a test and see how Lightroom copes with it. So it's fairly straightforward. We've got the 8 images there of the panoramic. Now what we're going to do is highlight all those. So I've got the first one there. I'm going to hold the shift and select, and then I'm going to right click on those to bring up the menu, and then we go to Photo Merge Panorama, or it's Control M on the PC, Command M on the Mac, and that'll bring up the Panorama Photo Merge preview window. So as you can see on here, it's going to start building a preview of our panorama so we can see what it's like. We've got a couple of options on here. We can auto select it, we can go spherical or cylindrical, and you can really just play around these, find out which you kind of want or which you see as best. Really just builds it slightly different. Perspective, I've got a feeling that really, it doesn't even want to do it. So but I find this one's a good thing. Now we've got these white marks around it, so we can also use auto crop on there, and that's going to get rid of those, which is pretty fantastic. But we do lose part of the image. You can see down here this little bit of the field is disappeared, and it's not so bad on there because we're not cropping off anything to the side. It's just really sky and ground. But we've now got a new feature within Photoshop CC, and it's this boundary warp. So if I take this, I slowly move it across, you can see what it's doing. It is warping the photograph, so it's not cropping it. It is warping it and fitting it to the window, which is fantastic. So we still got that detail in the field. All the detail is still there in the sky, everything is still there, but it's just condensed it and warped it and that sort of thing. Now the horizon on this is not perfect. As I said, I was handheld. It was just really a test to see how it is, but we could take that into Photoshop afterwards and use the puppet warp on that, and change the horizon around and do those sort of things, but that's probably for another day. So at this point all you do is click on merge. I'm just going to cancel that because it does take a few minutes. There's a lot of data here, so I've already generated that preview to see what it comes up with, and you can see that's it there, and it's done a pretty good job on it, to be perfectly honest. It's just rendering in the full-size version, but there's a tiny little bit of difference down here. The shot was actually taken on aperture priority, so it was on the same aperture throughout. It just changed the exposure when it needed to as it went through the shot, but I think in general it's done a pretty good job there in terms of capturing that and stitching that together. So I'm quite pleased how that has come out. Now again, we've got complete control on what we want to do on this. It's still a DNG file, or it's created a DNG file, we should say. The original files are a Canon CR2 file, so they're raw files, but this created DNG, which essentially is Adobe's version of a raw file. So we've got all the data there in this photograph. So we've got the all the highlights are in there, the shadows can be boosted, all those kind of things are in there. We can play around with, which is fantastic. So we've essentially ended up with a HDR image, and we'll just do those. All I'm doing here, by the way, is just holding down the Alt key, and that allows us to see where the whites start. We always want a bit of white and a bit of black in our photos, so we kind of want to stretch that histogram right across the top, and that just makes the image pop a little bit. Probably add a little bit of clarity to the midtones, boost the exposure a little bit, play around with your heart's content. And I think we've already done this where I've added in here now into the sky just a sort of a graduated filter, if you like, in terms of the sky. So we can probably do that, bring it down a little bit. There we go. So yeah, just allows us to add a little bit more sort of detail, contrast in the sky, take down the highlights a little bit more if we want to. Yeah, so nicely played there. So that's it really. Very quick tutorial, very easy to do in terms of creating a panorama now in Lightroom and being able to do your editing on it. Now I guess if you're going to be printing a huge print on this, you probably do want to take into Photoshop, you probably do want to play a bit more. I don't know, what do you think? Leave a comment down below, let me know. Is this a feature you're now going to use in Lightroom? Did you know it was there before? Is it something you use? What's your experience on it? And any other questions you've got, leave down there in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, leave me a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more photography tricks, tips and tutorials. My name's Andrew Wells, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.